The Russian community continues to develop its structure in the annexed Crimea. Offices have been opened in Simferopol and Sevastopol. District and city branches are being created, and the organization's volunteers have begun patrolling the peninsula's major cities. This was reported by a correspondent from KrymRealii. In addition to patrolling, the vigilantes are involved in police and FSB raids. The Crimean Russian Community Squad has established working contacts with law enforcement agencies, and we are already being called in for law enforcement raids. So far, these are mainly trips to construction sites to identify and detain migrants who have violated the law. We are also invited to ensure order at citywide celebrations. Recently, our brothers from Sevastopol helped the police ensure security at the birthday of the Sevastopol Defense Museum celebration, one of the Russian community members said, on condition of anonymity. According to the source, the Russian community in Crimea operates without official registration. All activities of the Russian community and its squad in Crimea are self-sufficient. The squad members must purchase a gas canister from their coordinator for 3,000 rubles and an ID for 2,600 rubles. Unfortunately, we do not have a mass influx of Russians into the community, nor do we have rich sponsors. An informal structure connected to the ultra-right Russian community has begun to develop in the territory of annexed Crimea. Its participants are forming so-called squads, a security wing that plans to patrol Crimean cities. In July, more than 40 men in Crimea have already joined the squad, and now their number has grown significantly. At the conference of the Russian community, which took place on July the 12th in Simferopol with the participation of coordinator Andrei Kachuk, a decision was made to create combat fives, a commander, a negotiator, an operator, and 2 fighters. Crimean coordinators were instructed to speed up the process and begin patrolling from Simferopol for now in the evening. Since the organization is informal, they call it walks. The head of the Crimean squad was instructed to establish interaction with local law enforcement agencies and administrations, the interlocutor of KrymRealii noted. Despite the fact that the organization Russian Community of Crimea, registered under Russian law, operates in Crimea, a parallel informal structure with the same name is actively developing on the peninsula. Its participants do not hide their sympathies for right-wing radical ideology and declare their readiness for self-organization without official status. The Russian community is becoming more active against the backdrop of high-profile incidents in Russia itself. For example, in Krasnozavodsk, near Moscow, a mass brawl recently broke out between natives of Chechnya and Ingushetia and, presumably, representatives of the Russian community. In recent months, members of this organization have been raiding cafes, hostels, and markets owned by people from the Caucasus, conducting unauthorized checks. Despite the violence and threats, Russian law enforcement officers in most cases limit themselves to formal responses.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer arrived at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland ahead of a meeting at the White House with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, European leaders, and U.S. President Donald Trump. According to Associated Press speaking to reporters on board his plane, Starmer said ending the war in Ukraine was in everyone's interests but that any peace deal reached had to be fair and just. "We've got to get this right. We've got to make sure there is peace, that it is lasting peace," Starmer said. The European leaders were left out of Trump's summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin last Friday, and they want to safeguard Ukraine and the continent from any widening aggression from Moscow. Many are coming with the explicit goal of protecting Ukraine's interests, a rare and sweeping show of diplomatic force. Monday's showing is a sign both of the progress and the possible distress coming out of the Friday summit, as many of Europe's leaders are descending on Washington with the explicit goal of protecting Ukraine's interests, a rare and sweeping show of diplomatic force. With Zelensky and several European leaders in town for hastily arranged meetings, the area around the White House bulged with security. The European political heavyweights expected in Washington are Macron, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Italian Premier Giorgia Meloni, Finnish President Alexander Stubb, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte.
This war in Ukraine has been going on a really long time now, 3+ years. Hugely impacted the Ukrainians who suffered hugely, but it's also impacted Europe, it's impacted every single family and community in the United Kingdom. And so everybody wants it to end, not least the Ukrainians. But we've got to get this right. We've got to make sure there is peace, that it is lasting peace, and that it is fair and that it is just. And that's why I'm travelling to Washington with other European leaders to discuss this face to face with President Trump and President Zelensky, because it's in everyone's interests, it's in the UK's interests that we get this right.
Prime Minister, how optimistic are you?
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met on Monday with Special Envoy Keith Kellogg in Washington. According to Associated Press, it comes as many of Europe's leaders are descending on Washington with the explicit goal of protecting Ukraine's interests, a rare and sweeping show of diplomatic force to show U.S. President Donald Trump a united front against Russia. Trump is set to host Zelensky and the leaders at the White House to discuss how to end Russia's 3-year war in Ukraine. The American and Ukrainian leaders are scheduled to first meet privately, without the Europeans. In his talks with Kellogg, Zelensky stressed that security guarantees would be the most important topic in the talks and thanked the president for his invitation. Ukrainian presidential advisor Dmytro Lytvyn said to journalists that it was a good meeting. Months of US-led diplomatic efforts to stop the fighting haven't made headway, but the stakes have risen since Trump met with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday. The presence of several European leaders at the talks in Washington shows how central the conflict, and any settlement, is to wider security questions on the continent.
Okay. Thank you so much. Hi, good to see you.
Great.
How are you?
Mr. President, thank you very much for your time. I know your time is busy.
A little bit.
What I wanted to do just briefly was to, I've got a meeting with the President, the Vice President, and the National Security Advisor, Secretary of State this morning.
Thank you so much. So first of all, we are thankful to the President for this invitation and the format of what we will have. It's important signals about security guarantees, and that's why it's important that we are together with the United States and Europe, and the President accepted the meeting, common meeting, also after our bilateral common meeting with Europeans. And so I'm so grateful that such big countries as UK, Finland, and the President von der Leyen, the Secretary Rutte, that they will come. And I think this will be important meeting, and we will speak about the architecture. I think so. We will have time to speak about architecture of security guarantees, and this is what really I think the most important.
Good.
Yes.